All right, well, I got something on my watch now, so I'll call the meeting to order. We have a quorum,
I'm gonna read some from the agenda, okay?
well, before we do that, let's go on the approval for the minutes of the last meeting. Motion to approve. Okay, I have a motion to approve the October 25th, 2022 minutes. Can we get a second? Kathy or Ella?
I'll second it, but I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm not going to vote on it.
Okay, Ella?
Yep, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? All right.
Aye.
All right, so those minutes are accepted. Welcome aboard, Mike. Good
I was gonna read about the procedures for tonight.
Okay,
The web-based meeting.
okay. Go ahead.
This is the-
How you doing, Mike? You still recognize me?
So this is a web-based meeting and we're operating under the following procedures. This session is being auto recorded just like every other CCP meeting. We'll also be recording the video of the proceedings to ensure quality sound. The default rule for this meeting is that everyone that is not a commission member is going to remain on mute. And then basically there is no public hearing scheduled for tonight, so we will not be taking any public comment on any agenda items tonight, but you're welcome to listen in if there's anyone from the public here today. Next.
Okay, thanks, Deanna. So we've already approved the minutes. We have a couple of petitions, it looks like.
Sure. Hold on. So Kathy recused herself. Abstained from that last vote, right?
Right.
Okay, just want to have that. So we have a couple of referrals, from Bosra. We have, a referral from the zoning commission. Let me see here, zoning regulation. So it's about event venues, for weddings, and dinners and corporate gatherings. And they're adding this to their regulation as a special exception. This does not appear to have an issue with our regulations unless someone had a comment about that. They're also, let's see, the same thing here. There's a site plan application for Bosra for 40 Stockhouse Road to construct a 25,600 square foot industrial manufacturing building with parking and other site improvement. And then they're going to be removing some ledge. And that was in front of their Wetlands Commission on October 6th for it had a jurisdictional ruling. There's no public hearing on that application, but we were notified because it's within 500 feet of the boundary. And then the last one from Lisbon, hold on. They copy of a letter dated October 26th. Michael Burgess of PMR Automotive Repair for signage at 689 River Road in Lisbon. And again, this is because the signage is within 500 feet, which does not have any effect on the city of Norwich.
Okay. No new business, and we're on to old business, which is tabled from the October 25th meeting. It's the referral from the Norwich City Council regarding an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Norwich. And an ordinance creating the master plan district. So, Ms. Poland, I think we're here to present on that.
Okay, I didn't realize it was denting for a second. So you guys have received an application for essentially a zone change, which also includes a master plan component to it. I issued a memo dated October 17th, which was a comprehensive review of the application. I also issued a correction a few days following, based on a thought that I never finished. That was dated October 21st. And then I issued a response memo to Attorney Block's memo. And that was dated, I believe, but it's 10 November. This application essentially proposes the construction of a road Want to do a large area. Large.
Let me see if I can find it.
There you go.
Kathy, can you hear Dawn speaking? We can't hear you.
You're on mute, Kathy.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, yeah, I can hear pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ella, can you hear? You're also on mute, I think.
Yep, I can hear.
All right, thank you.
So the application is proposed under section 3.11 of your zoning regulations, which essentially is the business master plan district. Therefore, the application process includes both the amendment to the map to apply the overlay zone onto this location, in addition to the master plan itself. For the master plan, you have two sets of documents that were submitted. You have multiple documents that were submitted, but in the context of the master plan, it is this set of documents, which you see right here with the schematic overview of the development itself, and then a very highly detailed design document of the road itself.
That one,
Ultimately on referral
that's this one.
from the council. Your primary consideration is the consistency with your plan of conservation and development. That being said, in the context of this being a master plan, you have the ability to kind of review the master plan itself and to provide feedback and information to the council as to what you believe is needed or required, and so forth. Is there further detail you want from me, or should I turn it to you for questions? Just
I don't know, Attorney Block, do you want to comment at this point?
Well, we did not come here to make a presentation. We are present, based upon my discussions with Deanna. We're here to observe and to be available for questions should the members of the commission, through town staff, have questions of us. So we did not prepare a formal presentation for the commission, but we're available to answer questions.
Okay, I just, since you're here, I wanted to give you the
I
opportunity.
appreciate the opportunity.
So, I don't know, is there more information? Does anybody have questions? Let's.
I have a lot of questions. I apologize, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I had that was my regular meeting night for my my job. So I wasn't at the last meeting. I got this agenda tonight and I think when I read the minutes, it said that we were supposed to get the link before tonight, and I just got it tonight. So I really haven't had a chance to look at this whole thing. This is kind of an important issue, and I think I personally need a little bit more time to look at this. I mean,
I think it was all available on the city website.
well, I mean, I didn't know it was going to be on the city website. I mean, I didn't get the agenda until tonight. I read the minutes, and in the minutes it said we were supposed to get the link before that, and I didn't get the link, so I don't know. I did try to go through it before the meeting, and it's just a lot for me to do in one night. I mean, I need more than one night to look at this. This is a big project for the city.
What kind of time frame are we working with?
The public hearing for the council is December 5th. So obviously they would like to have the referral back to them for December fifth, so. Should you want additional time on this from a time frame standpoint, it'd be preferable to have a special meeting, probably remotely. To talk about this so that, you could have a referral one way or the other for them for December fifth. That's their preference.
Well. So this is just the zone change. So this is a floating zone, so they're just changing the zone to this business park. And the individual, because we saw that plan that you brought before, that was shown before, that is not what's proposed at this point. That's a schematic. Is that correct?
So let me actually, in your last comment, you had ended with, this is a large project for the city. And I agree with you on that sentiment. Now, your second question, I think, gets to that in the context of, yes, this is a potentially large project, but what's before you right now is simply the zone change. But the zone change includes the master plan, which is
Right.
which is on the screen at this time, which essentially, this language gets challenging or nuanced, but it's essentially a conceptual development showing what could potentially be developed there. That being said, for any of those sites to come forward, if this zone change is approved, they all still have to go through the site plan process. So you're not approving the specifics of the development that's proposed there, but kind of the concept of the development that's shown there on that map.
So will this be a subdivision?
I believe the way it is proposed right now, and it's been something I've been struggling with in the context of my review of this, it is a common interest community. Therefore, what you see as sites are kind of conceptual use boundaries, not parcel boundaries.
So this will not be parceled out. It's gonna just be like a condominium. And they
Correct.
can
So
take as much land as they want for the building and their parking and their drainage. And the rest of it's gonna be maintained by whom?
I would assume the association. And that's one of the comments I would have tonight. That wasn't in my memo, and kind of as thinking through this. Is that the application narrative states this will be a common interest community. The narratives within the various documents, I think both the narrative documents of the application and the plan documents, I believe imply that this is essentially a single parcel of land that will not be parceled out, therefore not a subdivision.
Now, what do,
If I could just finish. That being
okay,
said, the main thing I was getting at is I think a reasonable ask in the context of this, especially if there's going to be a public road splitting through this site, is for a sample or draft of the condominium, the common interest community declaration that will explain how this entity is actually organized. I think there's also something that needs to be stated in there, and I'll yield to attorneys ultimately on this, but that is the continuity of the two parcels of land that will end up on either side of what could potentially be a public road. Because if it's two parcels with a public road down the middle, I think it may be a subdivision. But I believe also that can be addressed in a common interest community with a statement of these parcels are kind of, attached and combined regardless of the public road through them. So I think some clarity around the common interest community and documentation related to that is reasonable as a request.
Attorney Block, you on talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's our and conceptually, so that gives the developer, NCDC, some flexibility in the development of the park. If we do it as a common interest community where each of the so-called parcels is a unit in the common interest community with one vote per unit, so each of the users who would presumably construct a structure there would have an interest in the common interest community in the unit they buy. It gives us a bit of flexibility with the boundaries of the unit, which are conceptual on this plan. And also gives us flexibility in terms of buffers and side yards and those kinds of things. And I don't know that it's necessarily appropriate at this stage to have a declaration to submit to either the commission or the council sitting as the zoning board to review it, because what's before the commission and what's before the council is the master plan itself, which is the zone, how we develop it, how the declaration works. It could be a condition of the approval to submit a declaration, which would not be unusual in this concept. But I don't know that submitting it for a public hearing on December 5th is necessarily appropriate. And I can tell you, based upon my opinion, that having a road cutting through the parcel does not create a subdivision if it's declared as a common interest community. What happens?
So the road is not going to be maintained by the city. Is that correct?
It would likely at some point in the future, after the road is constructed and developed, and we have the development completed, so to speak, that there may be an application for the city to accept the road, but it's being constructed as a road by NCDC through the 384 acre parcel.
So I just have another question.
Part of the common interest community.
So the 384 acres will be owned by NCDC.
Correct. There are 17, I think about 17 separate parcels, which we have a contract to purchase, and they will all comprise the common interest community, and they're all inclusive of the business master plan that's before you.
Well, I could different from what is happening at the Israelite Industrial Park? Or is it,
What is happening?
I mean,
Well,
the,
the Stanley Israelite Industrial Park is, I was younger than, it was developed before my time.
me
But
too.
that was developed as a subdivision. That was not developed as a common interest community. So
But can I, what they did with that one, as they built the road and as developers came in, they cut off pieces of property separately. So they didn't create a subdivision initially. They just cut off properties as developers came in.
That
So
might
that's-
be accurate, but the road was eventually accepted as.
Right. Yep, that was, right, that. Now, so who is gonna buy this land?
Who's gonna buy this land?
Yeah, you said, you said, so it's gonna all be, NCDC is going to acquire all of the land. Are they gonna pay for it?
NCDC? Yeah, NCDC will pay for it.
Pay for it? And so do they get, I don't understand, I don't understand how that's gonna happen.
Kathy, hold on a second, please. I need to.
Yeah.
say- I mentioned this earlier on the record, but I just wanted on the record that I was formerly a member of NCDC. I haven't been for almost a year now. And I've consulted with council And I just wanted to put it out there on the record. I don't feel I have any conflict of any kind in this. I don't have any financial or personal interest in this development in any way, shape, or form, so.
Nor would we object to your participation.
Yeah, and I just wanted it out there on the record. I don't want somebody coming back later on and saying, you know, why didn't we know you were, used to be on NCDC? I don't know, used to be on NCDC, and I have no financial or personal interest in any development.
Nor do I think you have conflict. I think you're.
Yeah, I don't, I do,
That's a
I
good
just want it out there.
So I'm just trying to understand this and, oh, hold on, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to understand it because I don't really understand how this is gonna happen. That's what I'm trying to get at. And,
I think the issue though, Kathy, tonight is,
I know, but I just want to understand it.
can I finish?
Yep,
Referral to the city council as to whether or not this commission believes this zone change is in conformance with the plan of conservation and development. I think that's all that's before us tonight.
right, but I would like to know about it.
Well, can I ask, are we voting on anything but the amendment to the zoning map? I mean, the zoning map includes the master plan, but that master plan is conceptual, doesn't. But we're not voting on the actual. We're not voting on, well, all it looks to me like we're voting on is, does the zoning map get changed to allow this kind of development? But all the rules and regulations for how it's going to be developed have not yet been.
That's the challenging part of this. So yes, the primary thing you are voting on is an ordinance to establish the business master plan district in this location. You are applying a district that exists within the regs now to the map. However, and as part of that application, under this kind of special district, they are required to submit a master plan. So that's why you have this conceptual development before you to show what kind of the idea is for the development of this area. Now, as I said previously, everything you see on this map would have to come back for a site plan approval on individual application basis. But there are things within section 311, for example, Vulcan area requirements, where it does establish some minimum zoning. It says a minimum of 100 acres of contiguous land in one or more parcels is required to apply. But then it also says minimum front yard, side yard, rear yards, such yards as approved on the master plan, or maximum height of building, such height as approved on the master plan. So through the master plan process, you are also kind of establishing some of the criterion of the zoning for the area. And while I explained through my multiple memos, there is ambiguity in this regulation overall. And while there's been disagreement on my first memo from the applicants and the degree of agreement with the applicants that they explained, and that also I explained between us, the fact is, I think there are still things here that need to be ironed out. There's nothing in this application that establishes a height or establishes minimum setbacks. And there's also language that says a sign plan evidencing unified signage for the zone shall be included and approved by the council. So this isn't simply just approving a map amendment. There's other things embedded in it.
But how can there be things embedded in the master plan if it's a conceptual plan? I mean, where does it show where the height of buildings are, the side yards, front yard, signage? Where does it show that?
And that's some of the challenge here. So I tried to explain this in my second memo. I've written master plan zones for communities. The most recent one I did 2 of them in Holland, Connecticut, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And essentially in that regulation, it states as part of a master plan, you have to come in and propose your zone. You come in and you put forth and state that the height requirements are this, the setbacks are this, the lot
Right.
coverage is this, the building coverage is this. And you lay out all that criterion that's typically within the Vulcan area requirements for the zone that you are proposing it. The idea is the master plan provides the applicant the flexibility to design the development they want or need or think they can achieve. It gives the commission the ability to conceptualize that and through the process, establish what the actual zoning criteria will be for this district.
But that's not at this phase of what.
Yes, it would be at this stage.
I mean, and that's where section 311, and not to be rude to anyone that was involved in its creation, but it sucks. It is a very ambiguous thing. It wants to be a master plan district. It wants to be a master plan approach. It strives for that in the first section. It then kind of gets wishy-washy as it goes through, and then it tries to come back and be a master plan again. So it's giving us a framework to work on, but I can tell you there's differences in interpretations here that still remain between the applicants and myself as to how this applies. Which I think at the end of the day, I think the spirit and intent of a master plan is here. I think at the end of the day, you guys as a planning commission have discretion to make determinations related to this. And I think the council as the zoning authority has final discretion to determine what needs to be included here to establish the zone, which includes the master plan.
So do you have suggestions as to how the proposal can be tweaked to make it?
My apologies, I didn't hear the first half of what you said.
Do you have proposals as to how this proposal can be tweaked to make it conform to your idea of what a master plan regulation should be?
I think my memos kind of trying to get at that. I think there's some additional information that needs to be submitted. One is I think height needs to be considered and codified. I know at this time, the developers don't know exactly how many stories some of these buildings are gonna be. But with any zoning regulation, when you establish height, you don't know what the future implications are gonna be. So you guys could say 35 feet, or you could say 60 feet, or you could say 120 feet. I think there does have to be minimum setbacks established per the regulations that would apply to the perimeter of the entirety of the parcel, not the individual development sites, as my first memo kind of conceptualized.
Excuse me, can you turn on the video so that the public or we can see who's speaking, the City of Norwich video? Thank you.
So
Can't see it.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I think per the regulation, the way it's written, I think the signage needs to be included because it says it's established through this process. There's other things that I don't think need to be included. The uses are established by the regulation. The lighting are established. The lighting kind of yields to the site plan process. There's other things that yield to the site plan process. So I think at a minimum, there's a handful of items that probably need to be addressed at this stage. I think we're 90% there with what's before you. And at the end of the day, the biggest decision is this zone applicable here, but we still have to iron out the master plan.
I think we need more information on this.
Maybe, could we get an idea from Mark as to what does NTDC expect the city council to do beyond just changing the zone? I mean, we're not changing any of the zoning regulations. I mean, this is sort of a floating, right? A kind of a floating district. If somebody came up with 300 acres someplace else north, they could do the same thing. Right?
Theoretically, the purpose conceptualizes this location to some degree. It may be applicable elsewhere. I can't say it'd be applicable everywhere from my record.
No, I wouldn't suspect so either, but.
Yeah.
Is NCDC expecting anything from us except a change in the zoning map to outline this area?
Yeah.
And then does it propose to come up with regulations as to how this thing is to be developed by individual unit owners?
I think there are several pieces to this, right? In addition to the overlay zone being approved for this property, we were looking for the approval of the master plan insofar as it depicts the roadway, which we have submitted the detail for. It was beyond that, and I think we had suggested it in our memo to Mr. Poland, that once the council, as the zoning authority, has the right to amend the master plan, and it would be our intention to come back to the council with, and it could be a condition of approval, with these details that Mr. Poland has indicated are lacking from this particular plan. It's quite honestly, we were concentrating in this plan with the concept for the roadway only.
Yep.
And did not concentrate on some of the other items which should have been, or are subject to being criteria to be included in the plan. So we would then anticipate the council allowing us to come back to amend the master plan to include these standards. Plus, if a site plan is submitted and it was determined by the CCP or the applicant that there was a major revision or a major change to what the zone allows, then the applicant, the site plan applicant could come back to the council as the zoning authority for a change at that point.
Okay, so the only thing that we're voting on tonight is that the areas with all these addresses now get a new zone. And we have approved the concept of the road that goes all the way from the,
Route 97
Route
through
97,
to
right.
Laurel Lane.
basically the road that Bryant was gonna do years ago, right? Or something.
Yeah, it's something like that. Byron Brook had submitted a site plan years ago, which had a road system that ran through this parcel.
Okay, so all we're voting for is that these addresses be changed on the zoning map and that we are approving the road that's gonna run all along 97 that's gonna give us access to this property.
Exactly.
And we're not voting on anything regarding the requirements for building or dividing or anything else.
That would be for another day.
That would be.
But then the plan should be changed because that's not what they show, right? Isn't that right? They show conceptual buildings and, I mean, really, if you just want to change the zone and show the concept of the road, but
Well,
you have everything else on there too.
But I think that we can make a motion that is limited in its scope to approve only the changes on the zoning map and the concept of the road and do no more than that. So we're not going to be dealing with any of the regulations, changing the zoning regulations or anything else to conform to the, what regulations we might need in the future to allow these things to be developed appropriately. So I think that little question, but that the approval of the zoning map and the road is in the best financial interest of the city and conforms with our plan of development. And then we sit back and we wait for the regulations that are going to allow us to define and redefine those regulations, which are going to have to be changed to implement the concept. So we're not voting on any regulations. We're only voting on changing the zoning map with the road concept.
But that's not what the application says.
Well, that's what our answer is going to be.
If I could comment.
If I could come before you,
Sure.
just so the public knows that's listening in, do not send any messages in chat. There is no public comment on this. The public hearing is December 5th for the council. This is a referral from the council to the CCP only, where they need to send something back to the council for them to consider during the public hearing process. So do not submit anything in chat. These are not going to be looked at or reviewed because this is not a public hearing. So I'm just letting you know that. Thank you.
And again, we're only voting on a referral for approval to the city council. We're not approving anything or disapproving anything.
So
What we're doing is,
Advising the council.
saying we recommend or don't recommend it, whatever happens.
I want to be. clear.
Or can we say we need more information?
Well, let's.
So if I can first be clear on kind of authority, you have a referral that is a zone change master plan application to the council. It's been referred to you to provide feedback, to provide your votes as to the consistency and or not with your plan of conservation and development.
Exactly, that's what
You
we
guys are,
said.
right.
Right.
But I just want to be clear, because the language being used, you are approving a road or so forth. And the fact is, it's consistency with the plan, but I do have to make clear to you that application for zone change includes a master plan with it. So I think it's very hard to disconnect the two. That doesn't mean you can't vote on consistency. But I think you have to recognize that there is a conceptual plan that's attached to that zone change.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be clear in any recommendation you give back to the council. And I think in your recommendations back to council, you can find consistency, but you can provide additional recommendations. And that could be that additional information or other items, even procedural items like the filing of Mylars be required as part of the process. So
I don't think that that's necessary at this point. I mean, it seems to me, if all we're voting is to take these addresses and change the zoning map and approve the concept of the road, that is not a change in our zoning regulations. And
theoretically,
if there are going to be changes in the zoning regulations, then NCDC or the council are going to have to come back to us for them.
theoretically though, you could approve, you guys could issue a approval. It goes back to the council. The council could say approve. And because of the attached master plan, an application for a subdivision, for a site plan could come forward. And you guys, would never have a say in it again. You'd never see it again because it would be a zoning matter. And it could be put forth without any regulatory provisions established through this master plan process for bulk and area requirements,
No,
heights or signage.
no.
Right, I think at this point, I can't vote on this until I get more information and have a little more time to review it. And maybe the city council could table it until we have that time. I don't know. I haven't really been that involved with this. I'm sorry, but I don't know. I don't feel comfortable at this point to support it.
They can never come back to these, to the planning and zoning. Commission. The city council acts as the zoning commission. But they are required to forward to us any ordinance that is going to affect our zoning regulations. So when they do that, we're going to have to review them. Now, that doesn't mean that the city council has to accept our recommendations. They may or may not, but it's going to come back here. But it's all them in terms of the map and the regulations that are the zoning commission, and we're not it. So if we're the planning commission, we say that this change in the zoning map with concept of the road meets the criterion of our P O C D, and that's all we say. Then we wait for them to come back with proposed regulations, which are going to have to refer back to us, whether the council wants it to.
No.
And this is the kind of thing, where we have been at, every charter revision commission from the time I was on it and before, have been asking the city council to return or to provide that this commission is the zoning authority, but we're not. And I don't think that what we need to do here tonight has got anything to do except for this being the zoning map and the concept of the road being approved. And we will want a lot more information when the time comes when regulations are proposed, but it's got to be clear that the reference from the city council is for our approval or disapproval. So they can pass anything they want to, whether we want them to or not, based on what? They need a 3/4 majority instead of a 50% majority if we disapprove.
2/3.
2/3, whatever. it
They
is.
need 3/4 rather than 2/3.
I feel compelled just to state again, though, you're supposed to have an application before you that is establishing the zoning regulations for this zone. And not all of those regulations are being established by this application. That's problematic.
I totally agree with you.
Problem though, it's not ours.
No, but it is our problem because when they come with a site plan, we will have nothing to guide us. And I don't see what the uses are on there. I don't see, I mean, maybe it's on there. I couldn't see it. But I just can't support this at this point. I think we need more information. And I think it is really, I think we are not doing our job if we don't ask for that.
Well, as I see this whole project, NCDC is going to buy this real estate. By the time the roads are constructed, by the time they've decided what they're going to do with it, how it's going to be developed, how it's going to be marketed, I'm going to be dead.
I hope.
So,
We better make sure it's good, Mike.
yeah, right. But, I don't frankly see that, since our portfolio here is very limited, all we're gonna vote on, and that's in the motion, we vote that the zoning map be changed, the concept of the road be approved, and that's it, period.
Sure.
Or.
But then that would just be a straight zone change.
It says, although we anticipate, that the city council will be back to us with regulations proposed to add to the zoning book, whatever you call it.
It would not be the zoning zoning commission that comes back to us, it would be the applicant. And I'm,
Right, may I
Does
speak
somebody
for
want to
one
make a
second?
motion? Deanna?
I wanna
know
make-
you're gonna make a motion.
No, I'm not gonna make a motion. I just want to clarify that we have hired a consultant to review this application for ethical reasons. As a planner, because I work for the city and the city is integrated with MCDC in many ways. But I want to talk procedure, so I'm not talking about this application, okay? I just wanted to explain the regulation and explain the procedure. So the regulation, it came before the CCP a while ago. It came in through NCDC, the application, through the council for the regulation change. And what it did was established that you could set up a visitor's master plan district as an overlay zone, but the overlay zone can only be approved with a master plan with it. So it's not like it comes later. The overlay lands on the property with that master plan. That's it. That's what they're building. So it's not like another overlay that comes in like a historic district or something that you don't know what's gonna happen or something, or some special district. This says in our regulations that if you're gonna overlay a business master plan district, it has to have over 100 acres, it has to meet all these other criteria. And a site, the conceptual plan for that master plan lays out the roads, it lays out use areas or lots or whatever, and gives some criteria that conceptually you need to have a cohesive look to the master plan. Because it's a master plan district, so it has to have a cohesive look. It has to have a cohesive signage plan for it. And because you're thinking of it as a large scale project, not individual uses, it has to have potential uses identified, building heights identified at the master plan zone level, including those buffers. Everything gets decided at that zone change. Michael, I just want to clarify, that's what the regs say. So when you look at a drawing of a master plan, not talking specific to that, but any master plan that's going business master plan district and laying here, you're looking at that. That is the layout. That's the proposal. That's the proposal. So the commission needs to look at that and make recommendations back to the council to say to them, does this meet your regulations? Does it meet the regulations that, because you will no longer see this again until individual lots,
site plans.
use areas come back. So at that point, the signage for a master plan district has already been decided. The heights of buildings has already been decided. The architectural consistency design has already been decided. So that's the layer we're at now, just so you know, that's where you're at now. It's not gonna come back for regulation change. All of this has to be decided before that district lands. Is that understood, Dan? Did I explain it well enough for them?
Better than I did.
Okay, so you do need to look at that layout of a master plan and look at it for consistency and then make that recommendation back to the council. It's either a favorable or unfavorable, but it can be favorable with some conditions, and you've done that before on application, and say X, Y, and Z needs to be addressed. So when the council looks at a referral from you, they again have to consider those things that might be missing. So I think, to be fair to what the consultant was saying, that in that sometimes things are very close to being done, but they're not quite there, and that you could make those kind of, should you felt that you wanted to, some conditions that those things get met. But I just want to clarify, it's not coming back for any text amendments. You're applying that master plan, that layout right on, that's that zone change. It's different from a regular zone change that goes, you don't know what's going to happen. This one is the design. The design lays on top. That's it.
So are these regulations, this 3.11 provision, these are already in
Our
our
regular,
zoning regulations.
yes.
So,
So the consultant went through and looked at everything in 311 and made his comments on that of things that needed to still be addressed to comply with your regulation, and that your recommendation on looking at that for any proposal for 311, you would look at it and look, has it met those criteria? And if it has, then you can, make your recommendation based on, but if it hasn't, you also need to think of those things that aren't missing. I just wanted to explain it on a very general basis because I have not reviewed this application, and that's why we have a consultant doing that.
Then can I make a motion? I motion to table this application until such,
What if there's a discussion?
The only thing I was gonna add, and I don't disagree with what Mr. Poland said and what Leon said. However, what we are asking for at this stage is the concept of the road with we understand that we may have to come back and amend the master plan later on to add these other details. And what we're suggesting is we can do that, and I think the regulation is broad enough to permit us to do that, so you could approve the master plan overlay with the road, subject to an amendment at a later date to add the other components that are lacking at this point.
What,
Okay, so could we suggest that this approve this zone change with master plan overlay, but recommend or suggest that we are not sure that our regulations of 3.11 are sufficient and that they ought to be reviewed by NCDC, the Norwich City Council, and Norwich Commission on the City. Is that possible?
well, I think it's possible. The fact is, if the council ultimately approves based on that recommendation, someone will come forward with a site plan that doesn't have to comply with anything but a conceptual design. So the fact is, I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult on this. You have a regulation that clearly states unified signage has to be considered, that, buffers need to be considered, that bulk and area requirements need to be established. And without, I've been very hesitant. I did this in another community. I was given a similar task as this one. I was submitting an application, and after 7 hours on a Sunday of pulling my hair out, I issued a memo that said, this is an incomplete application. Just deny it. It doesn't meet the standard. And it finally came around. But my point being is, the fact is, you have something before you. I haven't wanted to say this, but you have something before you that's not complete.
right?
When that hypothetical is put out there that you're gonna, approve it so that they can come back later and amend the master plan with specific details that aren't there now. The only question that runs through my mind is, why aren't those details here now? This is the time for it. So I get the importance of the road. I support the idea of this development, the supportive material. I think the traffic study is great and kind of shows this is plausible. I think the economic impact analysis is great and shows that this is plausible. But we don't have the finite, the intricate detail here that your regulation is saying needs to be here.
When they're talking about uniform signage here, I'm sorry.
Mr. Poland, the 5 things that you mentioned, the only 5 things that we need to comply with in there, we want to be sure of what detail is not what we need to add to it.
Let me run through then.
You had the height, you had the minimum setback, you have the signage.
Height, signage, buffers,
Perimeter.
correct. But with that, I think the issue of a common interest community has to be established, because you can say that a common interest community, can have a road running through it. I get that, but if there are So first and foremost, actually, let me back up, thinking about this from subdivision law perspective. You have X number of parcels here, 14 parcels, 17 parcels, I can't remember the specific numbers, right? If any one of those parcels was ever part of an actual subdivision, you are now possibly engaging in a re-subdivision. Because the merger of an individual parcel in with parcels could be diminishing the number of lots actually approved in a prior subdivision. So I can't even tell that from my review. But that being said, regardless of that, if you now create this parcel, this unified parcel with what will be a public road running through it, that public road is a parcel in and of itself because it's going to be carved out and deeded off to the municipality. So I still think there's a potential here of a subdivision, even though that's not the intent. That's why I feel you need common interest, a draft of the common interest community to explain this. And if you go back to some of the early language in here, and I don't remember which section it is, but it says something along the lines to, differentiate between the public uses and the private uses within this master plan. For me, public and private is things like a lot to be developed or an area to be developed for private commerce versus a public road that is going to be, ultimately in the future, a public road. That's a differentiation, potential public open space and so forth. So I feel that some of that organizational structure here is worthy of consideration. Otherwise, I'm in a position where it's hard for me to say whether or not a subdivision or re-subdivision is required.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's within the scope of what we're discussing here.
So but that's where this gets very conflated for me. So one, I know under law, a subdivision must comply with zoning. I don't know of anything that says zoning must comply with subdivision. But also in the context of the establishment of a public road, I know no other vehicle in statutory authority to establish a public road other than subdivision. Because subdivision doesn't just simply establish lots, it also deals with all the public infrastructure, the roads and all the design and stormwater and all that stuff and utilities to actually provide service to those lots. So I'm struggling with the idea of how do you actually just come forward with an application to approve a road? And if that's the most important and only important thing here, then why isn't there just an application to approve a road? Because I know at the end of the day, the uses within this zone are important to you. So you're trying to get these uses established. So let me just continue with the specifics. So everything I just said could probably be, we could claim it's abstract and maybe not relevant, but every time I go through this regulation, it's like a new rabbit hole that opens up. So you do need to establish, minimum distance, district size, the 100 acres. You meet that's established by this authority. Serviced by adequate underground utilities and so forth, that's fine. Minimum front side, rear yards, such yards as approved on the master plan. Those need to be established. Maximum height, such height as approved on the master plan needs to be established. Architectural, I can go either way on. In the spirit of a master plan, it's typically considered. There is a final sentence here that says the commission on the city plans shall approve architecture during the site plan application. So you may be able to wiggle out of architecture. Signage, it says the sign plan evidencing unified signage for the business master plan district, including the general position. visible from any public right of way shall be included in the master plan application and shall be approved by the council. So I think you have to address the position, size, and appearance of signs visible from public right of ways as part of this process. Master plan shall establish parking which adheres to industry standards as determined acceptable by the zoning commission, that would be the council, right? With the parking located on the sites and so forth. I admit there's other language in here that says you just have to show parking areas, which you have done. You've shown parking areas. This one line though, adheres to industrial standards. I think there needs to be some level of recognition of, you know, parking per square foot of structure in those areas that's plausible, or at least on the entire site. That if this is a condo common interest community, that the total site's gonna have, you know, X number of parking spaces, and so forth. Otherwise, you know, I don't know what the point of this adheres to industrial standards actually means. Lighting is just, it has to be full cutoff and downward direction to shield and reduce glare. I think you could just provide literally just one diagram showing a cutoff fixture that's downward facing, and you comply with that provision. It says you have to state your uses specifically. I think your narrative has. You know, it's clear on the uses that are allowed, but you have to identify those uses. I think your narrative has done that and shown that. The buffers becomes wishy-washy. It puts a lot of focus. It says the purpose of the buffer areas is to provide privacy from noise, light, glare, to residential dwellings and locations where uses within the BPM abut residential district exterior to the BMPD. The council will carefully analyze any buffers between the BMPD and the surrounding residential neighborhoods and may tailor standard buffers to include enhanced landscaping, fences, walls, support, and so on. It then says under a sub provision there, standard buffers, unless otherwise approved in the master plan, buffers for uses within that will be maintained at, you know, these standards. This is my concern if I was sitting on the applicant side. If you're gonna have a bunch of angry residents show up at a public hearing concerned about this and not show any buffers between those areas and the residential dwellings that are near residential dwellings, then I think you're gonna end up with a big, huge mess. The fact is, you know, at the very least, in these areas where we know there's residential zones and residential uses, there should probably be some discussion of buffers in those areas. I just want to go back up and just make sure I haven't missed anything, because you asked me for the 5, and I don't know if that was the 5 or if I gave you 6.
Name six.
Okay.
You
And
click on the button.
I just want to, I don't want that to come back. No approval under section, plan. Location, layout, components, general intent, compatibility to the intended conditions, operations, district aspiration. Versus subdivision. Consistency, different conditions you comply with, conceptual plan shall show. I believe you comply with that. The description of any proposed new use changes will comply. Preliminary traffic analysis, you gotta provide a detailed traffic analysis. Site plan standards go to site plan design standards following. I think that covers it. I think those are the 6 things. And just on a procedural nature, typically, you know, a zone change application for a map amendment would typically have a specific zone change map that gets filed and shows shows that on the, it gets filed on the land records and it's the official amendment to the map.
Let me
Uh,
see if I can find it here.
Is it in the plan set?
There is one.
There is one, okay.
Rich showed it earlier.
Oh, right.
I gotta find it.
Yeah, I remember it
There,
now.
is it the zone one all the way to the left? That one right there? No, the next one over, right?
No.
Those are reviews.
Bear with me.
That map, yeah, that map was filed and filed as part of.
Would that be it then?
This application. I think that's a reasonable condition of approval to ensure that it actually occurs. And number two is, I believe in the context of a master plan, although not explicit within the regulation, that the master plan in and of itself should also be filed because it is establishing, how this is going to develop. Yes, it's not 100% set in stone. The site plans will ultimately, dictate the individual development, and amendments or changes could be made to it later. But at this point, I think the master plan needs to be filed.
Can I ask a question now?
Sure, go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, so if all you really want on this issue is to get the road approved with two separate it will be two separate parcels. Why don't you just do a 2-lot subdivision with the road going through it until you know exactly what you want to do for the master plan? Because really, this master plan is not adequate from what I can see and what I'm hearing. And like Deanna said, this is the master plan is supposed to create the regulations for the development. And if it's really just the road that you really want to get approved, just do a 2-lot subdivision with the road going through it. If that's approved, you don't have to file it, you don't have to build it until you're ready to, and until you're ready to do the master plan and have it done a little bit more in a little bit more detail. That is what I would recommend, because I don't think it's ready.
Let me throw this in the mix. This is an application to do what our regulations from 3.11 allow them to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, because if you read 3.11 from beginning to end, it's exactly what he's talking about. These 3.11 may be insufficient for us now that we look at an actual proposal. But it's too late to change the zoning regulations once the application has already been filed. So if they meet the requirements of 3.11 as we have them in the existing zoning regulations, and they've complied with that, I don't think we have any option but to approve. And we may want to recommend that our regulations are inadequate, but we have to work with the regulations that we have and that the applicant has filed and said, and we think they are in compliance, even though we wish they weren't. So
I don't think they're in compliance. I was just suggesting an alternative to this application. If this application, in my opinion, is not complete, and our consultant has said it's not complete, and that's what we pay him for, I cannot vote in favor of it.
well,
Unless we table it and suggest that the council tables it until we get more information.
I think what our consultant is suggesting is that the regulations in 3.11 are insufficient
No, that's not what he's saying.
for all the things that he's talking about. Our regulations are insufficient for the application that comes in. But 3.11 is already in our zoning regulation. So we can't go back and start putting in all these requirements once an application has been filed. We can't change the rules. You know?
Okay, so let's not, then my recommendation, then I would like to make a motion to deny this application because it's incomplete.
Motion one way or the other regarding this application?
I made a motion.
I didn't hear a motion.
I made a motion. Am I on mute?
No, we can
No.
hear you.
I didn't hear a motion from you previously.
Oh. I made a motion. Well, I disagree with my, I would make a motion that we table this application until more information is provided so that we can make a determination that this complies or doesn't comply with the regulations and our plan of conservation and development. Right now, I can't make that determination based on the information provided.
Okay, so
Then I need to ask this question. Assuming that we say our recommendation is that the city council postpones this. We haven't
Well-
given an answer as to whether or not we approve or disapprove, so they can act without us.
That's fine. They act without us, they act without us. But my recommendation is that we ask them to table it. My motion is that we ask them to table it.
Table. Does anybody second the motion? So the motion to table fails as there's no
Ella's
second.
trying to come on.
Oh,
Ella just unmute
all right,
herself.
Ella.
Yeah, I'll second it for just,
Okay, so Ella's second the motion. My understanding of motions to table are that they're not arguable, so I'll put the motion to a vote. All in favor of the motion to table?
Aye.
If Kathy's in favor, is that it? Opposed? So, Ella, are you voting?
I'm here, sorry, I was on mute. I do have one question. So they're putting the application in based on,
No discussion, it's either yes or no.
yes, I vote to table it.
Okay, so 2 in favor, 3 opposed. So the motion to table fails. Do we have any other motion regarding this application?
I move that we forward to the city council as the zoning. A decision that is favorable,
A favorable recommendation?
a favorable recommendation. But with on the basis that the applicant has met the regulations as they currently exist in 3.11. The fact that we strongly urge the city council to review more carefully the regulations of 3.11 to make more clear requirements of the master plan that are ambiguous, such as signage, lighting, parking, etc.
Is that your complete motion, Mike?
I could go on and on. Probably not.
Okay, so we have the motion for approval with the recommendations that you've made. Is anybody going to second that motion?
No.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now, this is a motion that can be discussed, so do we have discussion on this motion? Other than what we've already heard? Anybody want to discuss this motion?
I think we're doing a disservice to our community.
Okay, Ella, you're on mute, so we don't know if you're trying to communicate or not.
I honestly, with this one, because there's so much ambiguity, I just, you know, if we're gonna say, yes, we'll approve it, but you need to clarify all of this, we've already approved it. So if they choose not to clarify it, then we're stuck with that. You know, and then there's still the issue is, you know, we may be stuck with it anyways, because if the application is in accordance to existing regulations, you know, we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, no matter which way we go.
And frankly, I can't disagree with you there. I think we're between a rock and a hard place. But I think the rock and the hard place is, well, I hate to say this because I've been on the commission on the city plan for so many years. But I think the original error was in allowing these regulations to pass as they were, that 3.11 maybe should have been thought out a lot better, that that all the issues that are ambiguous, as mentioned by the consultant, would have been rectified, but they haven't been. And if the application meets the current requirements of 3.11, I don't think we have any chance, any option but to pass it.
But it doesn't.
Very clear, an applicant takes the zoning regulations as they find them when they submit the application. And the zoning authority, the city council, does not now have the option to change 3.11. It has to come in on the regulations as they exist on the date of the application. So we're between a rock and a hard place. I mean, we may not like it, but it's what the regulations say.
Can I make another comment?
I have a question, please. Did your motion include the language that the approval or the application is in conformance with the plan of conservation and development?
Well, that language should be added to,
Okay, told me to read the motion that you said, so I can have move for a favorable recommendation on the basis the applicant has met the regulations as they exist in 3.11, but strongly urge the city council to review more carefully the regulations of 3.11 to make more clear requirements of the master plan that are ambiguous, such as signage, lighting, parking, etc.
all right, so I think we have to say that, that we approve it because we believe it to be in conformity with, POCD.
The reason is conformity with the OCD.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so as amended, does anybody second the motion as amended? And Les seconds as amended. Any other discussion? Hearing none.
Kathy, are you talking?
I'm not talking, but you know how I feel. And I think that you're doing our community a disservice by acting on this at this point in time when they could provide us the additional information based on the regulations that would, let me speak, that would allow them to comply. But right now, I don't believe they are in compliance with our regulations and with creating this floating zone. I do not believe that is the case. They have not established setbacks. They have not established consistency of design. They have not established buffers. They haven't done any of that. And I think by asking the council to consider these issues and by tabling it would be a lot clearer.
We're not on the motion to table anymore, Kathy.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. So I cannot support this motion.
Motion to table, Kathy.
But
I
the
know.
the issue, Kathy, is I keep telling you.
Okay, you don't have to tell me anymore because I totally understand you.
Okay.
So, any other discussion on the motion as put out and seconded? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I,
So the motion is approved by a vote of 3-2. Okay, thank you. And do we have any other business before the commission?
Let's see here. We have no old business, we have no bond reductions or release requests. POCD update, we had a really meeting, about a week ago, and we're continuing to work on it. We gave a full update of all of the 4 meetings that we've had regarding the POCD with staff and with stakeholders, and they went well. As far as staff report, I think we can skip on that, and just adjourn next time.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, second,
Oh, who made the motion? I'm
Mike.
sorry. Mike,
Mike,
yes,
second.
last time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
and I would like to thank our consultant.
So would I. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mr. Boland, for your time and effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank